Coming up, it's fiction, but it strikes close to home. Oscar Hokeah talks about his first novel. A new study shows that the HP vaccine is making a difference. Melissa Buffalo tells us more. Plus, Navajo Nation politics is getting more diverse. Political correspondent Polly DeNetclaw tells us why. I'm Mackenzie Allen Charmley. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines from the ICT newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Arizona State University welcomes 3,500 Indigenous students from Arizona and across the nation. It serves one of the largest populations of Indigenous students among U.S. colleges and universities. We created a sense of place for tribal nations to create futures of their own making through community outreach and research, taught by world-class Indigenous faculty where they see a reflection of themselves and their experiences. Find community at ASU.
Chinangale, we're so happy you could join us. We start with millions in federal funding allocated to tribal lands to support clean energy developments. The Department of Energy issued a notice of intent to release $50 million in funding this spring. This funding opportunity will be available to tribes who submit an application to the Office of Indian Energy. Awards are anticipated to range from $100,000 up to $5 million. The funding hopes to provide clean energy generating systems for tribal buildings, installations of emergency power systems for underserved tribal communities, and power unelectrified tribal buildings. According to the director of the Office of Indian Energy, Diné citizen Walia Johns, the awards will help many tribes transition and achieve energy sovereignty. Between 2010 and 2022, more than $120 million toward tribal energy projects have been invested by the department across the country. Earlier this month, 50 First Nation children and their parents celebrated their Indigenous culture. Indigenous Tourism Ontario provided an all-inclusive trip for families to provide a full-circle Indigenous tourism experience. Over the weekend, families visited the Ontario Science Centre's Indigenous Ingenuity exhibit and the Toronto Maple Leafs Native Heritage Night. First Nation citizen Tyler Rushnell created the Indigenous logo for the team's warm-up jerseys. And another First Nation citizen and artist, Crystal Kimwan, and her team hand-beaded the Maple Leaf team medallions. Indigenous food and music from a Native DJ was highlighted along with a performance from a drum group. The group says it looks forward to growing in the Indigenous tourism industry and increasing big-name collaborations for the future. Last week, tribes and lawmakers celebrated James Ramos becoming the first Native American chair of the Assembly Rules Committee. The celebration of this appointment took place at the California State Capitol in Sacramento. Ramos was praised by other California tribal leaders and was honored with gifts, dances, and songs. It was a historic moment in a space that once caused harm to Native people.
In this rotunda, and as you walk this hallway, the prior governors, the first governor that approved that militia and that money, his picture is on the wall. There was probably a never day that he thought California Indian people, let alone sitting as chair of rules, that would have voted on that, to now be sitting in the rotunda having a ceremony. It's because of the resiliency of California's first people, our ancestors, and those with us today.
The use of artificial intelligence could help to reclaim Native languages from extinction. Northern Cheyenne citizen Michael Runningwolf, who worked for Amazon's Alexa project for 4 years, believes AI can help. With so few elders and first language speakers, passing down aspects of Native culture is a challenge for many tribal nations. But imagine if you could put on a virtual reality headset and enter a village where the entire community speaks the language of your ancestors. Currently, the computer science PhD candidate is working to figure out how to get native languages to communicate with AI. If his team can accomplish this, Runningwolf says there's a chance AI can be used to help revitalize Indigenous languages everywhere. And he believes that one day you'll soon be able to order groceries with Alexa by speaking an Indigenous language. In Canada, Mi'kmaq singers and elders are working to ensure that even those who can't hear can experience their honor song. The song is featured prominently at the nation's events and is a spiritual anthem honoring heritage. At these events, deaf people were previously unable to fully understand and fully participate. The honor song has been translated into both American and Mi'kmaq Sign Language. Different forms of sign language were spoken all across Turtle Island, with many, such as Mi'kmaq Sign Language, still being known today. Translators responsible for the project worked closely with elders to find the correct meanings between spoken and signed words. They also work to ensure that the meaning and feeling was properly conveyed. A video of the sign language version was produced by Nova Scotia Community College and features Holly Green. In the future, they hope to translate more music. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. Calling for a Blanket Dance is Oscar Hokeah's first novel. Released last year, it's been critically acclaimed across the country. At the heart of the book is family. Hokeah's characters are Kiowa, Cherokee, and Mexican identity, which carry forth intergenerational trauma. Welcome, Oscar.
Hello, thank you guys for having me.
To begin, I was hoping you could tell us about the novel and its characters.
Yeah, so the Calling for a Blanket Dance revolves around a single character by the name of Evergimasaddle. And like you had mentioned, that the character has an identity that has Kiowa, Cherokee, and Mexican within it. And so the structure of it has Evergimasaddle on this trajectory where he's making some unfortunate decisions, kind of a lot of the similar decisions that we see in Native communities today. And his family members step up to try to help guide him. And ultimately, it's up to him to make the choices to find strength to continue to fight for himself and his children.
And how much of the plot is autobiographical?
Yeah, so what I do is I write a form of writing that's called, I write literary fiction, but it's kind of autobiographical fiction. So I draw from personal experiences. And then what I do is I take those personal experiences. Sometimes they're my own, sometimes they're of relatives or close friends, and then I mesh them together. So I draw from elements like the main character's grandparents. Lena Stopp, his grandmother, is kind of semi-based on my grandmother and her sister. His grandfather, Vincent Gimasaddle, is loosely based on my grandfather, Virgil Hokeah, and just different characters in the novel. So like the mother character is, based on my mother as well. And so the main character does take some elements from my personal life and some tragic things that I've gone through personally. And so I include that, like how he overcomes those elements are similar in the ways that I overcome them. But there's very real fictional elements within that because whenever you're blending different storylines together, you create really big gaps, and you have to fill those gaps, and then it becomes very much fictionalized.
So the novel takes us inside the minds of several characters, all seeming to be dealing with the past in some ways and looking for redemption. I was hoping you could touch more on that and the keys that they find along the way.
Yeah, so we have different characters, like you mentioned. With there's Vincent Gimasaddle, who is Evergimasaddle's grandfather, who's dealing with basically like post-traumatic stress disorder from serving in the Korean War. And the way he copes with that is what has been through alcoholism. But he's gotten to a point in his life where he's decided that he needs to make a change. And so he's going to make that change for his grandkids. And so you see him at that point where he's doing this transformation journey. He's going into this transformation journey. And it kind of reflects what the main character goes through. I call this novel like a decolonization narrative, where you have characters who have made mistakes in the past and are trying to redeem themselves, and looking at that through the vehicle of decolonization, through this healing process. And so you see characters like Vincent Gimasaddle and the main character Evergimasaddle, but other characters in the novel as well kind of go on that same trajectory of trying to transform themselves.
You work with Indian child welfare for the Cherokee tribe. Do those experiences influence your writing?
They do. Yeah, it's very much part of my writing style, I guess you would say, is that that I like writing about youth workers, adults working with youth and helping guide youth in order to make better decisions. Like I've been working with at-risk youth for, almost 20 years. I started in a group home with the all-native group home with Pueblo, Apache, and Diné people, Diné children in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And then also went on to work with the Santa Fe Mountain Center in Santa Fe, New Mexico as well, and where I was working with entire communities, entire Pueblo community, Apache communities, and Diné communities as well. And so then whenever I moved back to Oklahoma, I started working with Cherokee Nation. So that's what I do now, is I work with the Indian child welfare. And so that, because I have, 20 years of experience in that field, that I take that element and I put it inside of my writing. And so where characters are looking to, like you mentioned before, redeem themselves, oftentimes that redemption is found within working with youth. Like, how can I transform myself as I help these young people transform themselves? And so it's very much embedded inside of my writing, and I think that's probably going to continue.
With this being your first novel, I was hoping you could share with us your favorite part of this process, since it's so new.
Well, there's been a lot of interesting things that have happened that I didn't expect to happen as the novels had its kind of debut into the world, and it's gone out and into the communities, or into the publishing world. So one of those things would be like getting noticed by the New York Times. That's a big thing, but also getting the book on the Amazon billboard in Times Square, on a 6-story building. That was pretty phenomenal. But there's been a lot of moments like that. This is a first time experience for me. A lot of it is new, and I'm just learning as I go. But those have been pretty phenomenal to happen. But there's also stuff like, I guess for me, some of the bigger things than that would be that the novel debuted as a #1 bestseller in Oklahoma. And so that was important to me because, I'm from Oklahoma. I live here in Tahlequah, Oklahoma, work for Cherokee Nation, and having Cherokees and Kiowas and Oklahoma natives rally behind the book was important. And then also doing, broadcasts and events with Cherokee Nation as well. So those things are really important for me locally, because the way I write is very hyper local, very tribally specific to like Tahlequah and Lawton, Oklahoma. And so I was excited to see that the novel had such a wonderful reception here in my home state.
Yeah, I'm so happy that your book was received so well by tribal communities. We're wrapping up our time here, but I was hoping you could give any advice for aspiring writers.
Yes, yeah. So just to stay the course, it took 14 years. It took 14 years for this book to reach fruition, to get on bookshelves. And so the journey started back in 2008, and then 2022 is when it actually hits bookshelves. So stay the course. Once to write for a goal to complete a novel, and then once you feel like you've completed that novel, move to the next novel and start writing on that one. Even if you're going to come back and start revising the first one you wrote, just move between multiple novels. And I'd say that because once you're in the industry, like right now, that's my life. Like right now, I'm working on book 2, but I also have book 3 written as well. So I'm moving back and forth between book 2 and book 3. And so that's just the natural rhythm once you start publishing. So if you start doing that before you actually get a contract, and before you get a deal and you got your book coming out, you'll already be habituated to that process. But it's a long journey. And so just, you have to have patience and just stick with it. And like I said, just move back and forth between multiple novels. And if you have 3-4 novels done by the time you get your first contract, then you're going to have 3-4 novels that you can publish, and you're ahead of the game, more or less. So that's another, benefit to writing like that. But yeah, I think it just takes a lot of tenacity, a lot of patience, and a lot of dedication. But yeah, we definitely need more Native writers from Native communities writing and putting their voices out there. Native communities need it. We need to see ourselves reflected inside of media and pop culture as well. And so we're seeing more and more of that. But there's a lot of room out here for that kind of writing. So just stick with it.
Well, Oscar Hokeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
January is Cervical Cancer Awareness Month. Melissa Buffalo joins us to talk about the impact cancer has on Indigenous communities. She's CEO of the American Indian Cancer Foundation in Minneapolis. Ms. Buffalo is committed to working with and for tribal communities, both urban and rural, to support Indigenous people with opportunities to heal emotionally, historically, spiritually, and physically from the burdens of cancer. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Hello.
It's been 17 years since the HPV vaccination was approved. Can you tell us what the impact has been on cervical cancer?
Yeah, I think we have to look at it from that perspective of prevention and we know cancer is preventable. So when we look at the importance of getting the HPV vaccination to prevent cancer, just as another opportunity that as Native people, when we look at our disparities and our inequities, that, how do we learn about what the impact of HPV can have on our relatives, and being able to get that education out to our tribal communities in a way that is understandable and relatable, so that we do have more young ones going in to get the vaccine.
Do the statistics for Natives and the broader population differ?
Yes, a little bit. And, we can always question data and whether or not it is truly representative of American Indian, Alaska Natives, Native Hawaiians. But, we do see and hear about, AIAN are nearly twice as likely to develop cervical cancer compared to non-Hispanic white women. And again, coming from that perspective of, who's counted in the data, racial misclassification. And so just, always being mindful that there's always more work we can do, but that the data helps to even tell a better story to get the information out there.
Coming up, February is Heart Health Month. What is your organization doing to provide education?
Yeah, so again, as a foundation that is focused on cancer disparities and equities, we can look at heart health and see some of those comorbidities. And we look at some of those risk factors and what are those symptoms, and understanding, where they relate. And, again, another statistic we do hear, that heart disease is an issue in Indian country. And so what can we do to raise awareness, help folks be aware of their risks, whether or not, age, we can't control our age, but we can control, our physical activity, how much sleep we get, how we deal with stress, weight management, refraining from commercial tobacco use, really taking a look at our nutrition and diet, limiting alcohol use. So again, what are those risk factors that we can control, and being able to, just be healthier.
You have a deadline in early February for Blue Beads Champions. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so in March, we raise awareness for colorectal cancer, our national campaign that, again, just raises awareness on the importance of colorectal cancer screening. What is the education? What is the message we need to get to our communities that is geared for communities, and not just on a general scale, but being able to know, our communities know themselves best. So this year, it's super exciting because we just got our very first opportunity to sponsor up to 10 microgrants to urban and tribal clinics to host their own colorectal cancer events, which we call Blue Beads campaign. And so, being able to award 10 microgrants to our clinics to be able to drive, an event that will help, their specific community, being able to raise awareness, to get folks in to get screened, because there are options. To know what your option is for colorectal cancer, there's various tests, and knowing, which test is right for you is the best test. And again, understanding what goes into a screening, understanding the prep work, and, what is the age to get screened. And again, thinking about your family history, what are those risk factors. So again, it's exciting to know we have up to 10 microgrants to have clinics host their own events this year, which is really exciting.
And what else is coming up at the American Indian Cancer Foundation?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of amazing things, trying to, see where cancer screenings have been delayed due to the pandemic, and where, we see a lot of the mainstream cancer organizations, foundations really highlight, getting back on track when that track was never what was for American Indian Alaska Native. So how do we continue to raise awareness in a way that is reflective of our communities, knowing what their needs are? And so it's just really a good time to, again, to think about too, like how culture plays a role and where ACAF really leans in on those cultural and traditional ways and, leaning in on, the community knows their community best. So how can we use that information and build an even stronger campaign for our relatives, whether it's, addressing colorectal cancer, breast cancer, cervical cancer. So there's just so many amazing opportunities out there in a way that is culturally tailored to our communities.
Well, Melissa Buffalo, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
ICT's Polly Danette has been covering the historic moments in the Navajo Nation politics this year. She's back to talk with us about the most recent updates. Welcome back, Polly.
Thank you so much for having me, Mackenzie.
Can you tell us about the news coming from the Navajo Nation Council?
Yes, so very exciting. The Navajo Nation Council has elected the first Navajo woman to hold that position. So the Navajo Nation speakership is elected every 2 years by the 24 members of the Navajo Nation Council. And it's really exciting to see a Navajo woman ascend into that role. Crystal and Curly is a former Miss Navajo. She has held policy analyst jobs throughout the Navajo Nation, and she also holds a master's degree from the University of New Mexico, and she has been the communications in the communications department for the Nez administration for the last 4 years, and she has a plethora of knowledge to bring into this role. So while she is new in the council delegate position, she is not new to Navajo politics.
And for our audience members who don't know what the Speaker of the Navajo Nation Council does, why is this such an influential position?
So the Navajo Nation speaker role is one of the most influential roles in the Navajo Nation government, and some would even consider it, from the folks that I interviewed, would consider it even more influential than the role of president of the Navajo Nation. And this is due to some historical issues that happened in the past that took some power away from the president's office and gave it to the Navajo Nation Council. And so the speaker really helps to sort of, one, push through legislation, but also formulating what legislations are important. And so the role of speaker is just so influential and so powerful.
Boo Nygren also gave his State of the Navajo Nation address. What were some of the things that he said?
So one of the things that President Boo Nygren did address in his first State of the Navajo Nation address last week was the mask mandate. It was a very controversial move, one that was not unprecedented, as he campaigned from the very beginning saying that mask mandates on the Navajo Nation should be lifted, as well as other health orders that prevented local governance offices from staying open. And this is something that he said throughout his campaign, and a campaign promise that he did keep, though it did cause some controversy and some online chatter about whether or not the Navajo Nation should have done this. There was some council delegates who said they were not informed that this move was going to be made and were surprised. And so that was one of the things that he mentioned. He also talked about gravel pits. And this is one issue that Boo Nygren has continuously talked about in order to lower the cost of road construction on the Navajo Nation. Boo Nygren's administration would like to see gravel pits open up on the Navajo Nation to lower the cost of road constructions. And he said in his State of the Nation address that he would like to see gravel pits open by the end of the year. And there are a lot of steps that obviously have to be taken. One of them is, which was pointed out by one of the council delegates during his State of the Nation address, is, this has to go through the mineral department, and it hasn't even started there. But Nygren has already talked to Secretary Holland a handful of times about getting these gravel pits opened. So those were the two major things that he talked about in his address. And then just again, his platform of getting back to basics and making sure that the Navajo people have what they need, the basic necessities that they need.
Well, Polly, we're wrapping our time here, but what are you working on next?
So I am working on a story about Representative Gallego, who is running against Kirsten Sinema in the Arizona Senate race. And he kicked off his events on sovereign lands in Arizona. And that was a really exciting interview. And so I'm happy to be reporting that next.
Well, Polly Danette-Claw, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Mackenzie.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.